beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. Within this video guide I will be sharing a very refreshing dark beer with you for the summer that has some really amazing flavours that I will go into during the course of this video along with other important details. This video has been designed as providing complete and pure information in an easy to understand format and will deliver you everything you need to know without wasting anyone's time. So let's get started. Let's now go through the steps in order, starting with a sneak preview of my recipe's vital statistics. This recipe offers an approximation of 8.3% ABV, which as you can see for the start is under the middle point. This style on the whole is designed for hot weather and offers something very easy drinking and refreshing. More on this later. This recipe, like all of my shared recipes, is written by me and can be found in full within the video's description, which can be found underneath the video window when viewed on a desktop computer. Like all of my shared recipes, this recipe is very tried and tested, so brew it with confidence. You will also find a link to the recipe in full on Brewfather, which can be used free of charge with some restrictions. I strongly recommend that your initial steps will be to convert the recipe before ordering in your ingredients, so that you're actually brewing the recipe as intended. You should also brew this recipe as is the first time, and then next time tweak it if you wish to, rather than the other way around for the very best of results. I have an easy guide to doing recipe conversion using Brewfather on my channel as shown on screen now. Within this video, this recipe is being brewed using a Brewzilla 65 Gen 4 system to the volume of 20 litres, or approximately 5.28 liquid US gallons. As part of the conversion process, this can be easily scaled and shaped to suit your own brewing system and volume requirements. Recipe conversion is an essential part of the initial process for any shared recipe, but thankfully the conversion is easier when you know how. I also strongly recommend that you plan your water profile ahead. After all, beer is mostly water and its balance is very important. Shown on screen is the water profile that I preferred in developing this recipe, which is found on Brewfather. Brewfather also has very good documentation on how to use the software to make the necessary water changes too. As you can see, I'm using a dark lager profile here, and I will add that the dark grains will help acidify your mash, so that you should find that you're within a good mash pH range of between 5.2 to 5.5 pH without any or much alterations. Let's now move on to the brew, which starts with the gradual adding and stirring in of the crushed malt from our recipe into preheated mash water. Unlike some dark beer recipes, I suggest that you add all of the grain within this recipe into your mash straight away instead of holding back the dark grain. This recipe has been created with this in mind and is balanced according to that. More on this in a moment as we discuss the grain bill. Shown on screen now are our mash temperatures for this recipe. This mash in here is a little higher than the average and is designed to hold back some extra sugar so that this beer does not finish dry. Naturally, we also do not want this to finish sweet either, so this is also balanced into the recipe as a whole, with the mash being just one factor. I have to say that I especially enjoy brewing dark beers due to the amazing aroma that can be enjoyed during the process, and I can tell you that this one did not disappoint at all. Let's now start the actual mash and look at the grain bill. Here you can see that we have 82% of our grist being pale ale malt, which provides the bulk of the fermentables and a canvas for flavour. Then at 7% we have Vienna malt, which primarily adds in some rich malty sweetness to this one, but at a controlled level. My original take on this recipe had this at a higher level, but it certainly works far better overall at this level to allow our other big flavours to sing. You may also notice some toasty flavourings from this malt too. Then at 4% we have Carafa Special III, which is a chocolate malt from Weyermann that has been dehusked to remove any astringency. If you cannot obtain this malt, or at least one that has been dehusked, then I suggest you do hold back this portion of the grain bill until the last 15 minutes of the mash to counterbalance this. This malt will primarily add in very nice and smooth chocolate and coffee flavours and will also offer some assistance in darkening the colour too. Then we have two different types of caramel malt. US brewers should take note that the numbers here signify the colour level in EBC, not SRM. Do not worry if you cannot obtain these exact numbers, simply go as close as you can. These malts will adjust colour and will also add in different levels of caramel flavouring to the recipe. They are also known to add head retention too, as a nice bonus. Then lastly we have black malt, which is also known as patent malt. This is used at just 1% of our grist because frankly that is very powerful stuff. Even at this far of a low level you will pick up some very nice notes of roasted flavouring with licorice, which is usually accompanied with some smoky and nutty flavours too. I am aware that some recipe writers are wary of this malt. Do not be. Its effects are very nice when it is used sparingly, but quite quickly overtake a recipe when too much is used. At 1% of our grist, this fits very nicely into this recipe. After the mash, I performed a gradual sparge by hand, covering all areas of the grain below to ensure a good level of efficiency. As soon as the basket was raised, I set the temperature close to boiling point to move the brew along in time quickly. Some brewers will skip the sparge entirely. This will cause a drop in efficiency, and my taste buds also detect a loss of flavour too. I could deal with having to use a little more grain, after all grain is cheap, but I do not want to lose flavour, so I continue to sparge. You should make your own choices here. It was then time for the boil, and once I had cleared the protein from the top, it was time to add the hops. For this brew I've used Saaz, as I really love the way they complement this style. This recipe uses the modern boil timer 30 minutes, with hop additions at the start of the boil for bittering, and then at 5 minutes for an extra twist of that Saaz spice. As you add your hops, ensure you give them a good stir so that they can work their magic straight away. After cooling my wort to yeast pitching temperature, I then started transfer into my fermentation vessel. For this brew I highly recommend the use of Lollemont's Novalager, which I pitched at the rate of 2 sachets for this one due to the ABV. Alternative yeast can be used though of the lager type, or perhaps Lutra Quake, which offers a very acceptable pseudo-lager result. If you are using Novalager, then I have found that this is still very clean at temperatures up to 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit, though I have set this one in my recipe at 20 degrees Celsius or 68, so the choice is yours. Should you decide to ferment this one under pressure, then you can certainly push this temperature higher if you wish. In terms of how much pressure to use, then please be aware that the yeast industry is united in suggesting pressure use of no higher than 1 bar or 14.5 psi for pressure fermentations. This is simply to ensure a safe and yet very good end result. Using more is also rather pointless, it has to be said. Personally though, I've had simply great results of between 10 to 12 psi and feel this is more than adequate. For this brew I used 12 psi at 25 degrees Celsius, which is the equivalent of 77 degrees Fahrenheit. At these levels this brew fermented out within 24 hours and the end result was, as always, super clean. Let's now look at the end beer from this particular brew combined with my tasting notes, starting with a close-up look at the pour and then the same pour with a focus on the full glass. As you can see, the beer is brown on the pour, but as you will see it is very much black with a nice tan head in bulk in the glass. This beer has been under 12 psi of pressure, which is 0.83 bars in the keg, and I'm using this pressure for serving too. This pour is being made using a Nuka tap with a stout spout fitted. It is not quite the same as nitro, but it is a very nice effect that I enjoy, without the extra expense and hassle involved in a full nitro setup. The beer you see here is around the 3 wig point from Kegging, which is when this beer to my mind becomes very drinkable. Being a dark beer it will condition pretty fast, but due to its alcohol content you may notice it continually improve for the first 6 or so weeks. Your taste palate will decide for you. One very important area to be aware of for this style is its best drinking temperature, which is at around 14 degrees Celsius or approximately 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Drinking this style colder than this and you'll miss out on the flavours of the style, which would certainly be a huge pity. Here are my tasting notes at this 3 wig point as follows. Aroma. The aroma found here is malty with chocolate, caramel and coffee in this order of strength. It certainly is very inviting. Flavour. This beer is super smooth and a little creamy on entry. The first flavours you experience are malty and caramel-like, which then develops into slightly toasty chocolate and coffee, but with no harshness at all, and then creamy smoothness that also becomes the finish. There are no alcohols to be found here at all. Everything about this beer is clean and easy, and due to this it is very refreshing and in keeping with the style. Here are some notes. Men and women alike tend to really enjoy this recipe, and frankly it is dangerously easy drinking due to how smooth and easy it is despite the alcohol level. My final impression here is that this is a super smooth, very flavourful, easy drinking beer that has nothing to offend anyone's taste buds, though caution is advised as in reality this is over 8% ABV. So there you have it. I would love to hear from you once you have brewed this and have made your own tasting notes. Please do include the conditioning time and any other important notes that are relevant, but most of all I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support, you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel, then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!